We have to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, the Kansas City Invitational, 5 straight
Oh, come
years.
on.
Unbelievable. I feel like we're getting to a point where Justin has said it before and I've said it. Kansas City is the new New England. But there's a boogeyman, my friend. And that boogeyman is Joe Burrow and the
Mhm,
Cincinnati Bengals.
mhm,
I've told you before, I said it once, and I'll say it twice. The Bengals defense is Super Bowl material.
mhm.
Lou Anarumo is one of, if not maybe the best defensive coordinator in football. He has done a phenomenal job this season. And Cincinnati up front last week smashed the Bills without Daquan Jones. I look at this matchup, BC, and the biggest factor is Patrick Mahomes' health. We'll start with Kansas City. He has a high ankle sprain, and typically when you see this injury, it takes up to a month to heal. Now, this
Mhm.
guy's built different. He's built like Big Ben, let's be honest. The last time he had one in 2019, a week later, an opening night or opening day of the game, he throws 4 touchdowns versus the Raiders, and that was literally a week after suffering that injury. But man, this Bengals defense is one of the most physical in football. Up front, the secondary is going to play tough, and I look what they got: safety, Von Bell, Jesse Bates. They can match up with Travis Kelce. For me in this matchup, it is crucial. I mean everything. They get Isaiah Pacheco going early. He has been a really good player for them this season. And last week versus the Jaguars, over 90 rushing yards. They need to establish that run, especially in this point in the season. You can't be one-dimensional with a quarterback, the best player in football, arguably, on one leg. I know he's still great. He threw a touchdown pass in spite of it, but you want to work Mahomes into the game. And now, if there's anything Andy Reid knows, it's probably that. And we also don't know what Patrick Mahomes is really going to look like. What percentage will he be at? But for me in this game, against DJ Reader and one of the best run-stopping teams in the league in Cincinnati, this is going to be a matchup that depends on the Chiefs' tackles, I think. I believe they'll do their job up front, but Orlando Brown, he really struggled to start last week's game at left tackle. At large this year for the Chiefs, the tackle positions, they've been a turnstile. I mean, Orlando gave up 4 or 5 pressures in the first 2 quarters, but in the second half, they started to do a better job up front. Given Patrick Mahomes was down, motivated them a little bit for Orlando, he did a way better job. If they struggle with the tackle spots, this game honestly could be a multi-score game in favor of Cincinnati. And I really want to highlight this to the Chiefs as well. I think Juju Smith-Schuster, he really needs to have a big-time game as well, setting that tone. The Bengals are physical, but so is he. And when I saw him in the postseason in Pittsburgh, I always knew these guys going to play harder than almost anybody. And I feel like for the Chiefs, that's the two biggest X factors here: Isaiah Pacheco and Juju Smith-Schuster. But shout out Kadarius Toney as well.
So I disagree with you. You and Justin have said that Kansas City is the new New England. Let's everybody slow our rolls, please. Um, but in terms of this game, the history between these two quarterbacks, these two teams over the past I guess year and a half, is well known. Joe Burrow, 3-0 versus Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. In those games, just to peek behind the stats, Joe Burrow in those 3 games, 72% completion percentage, 327.3 yards per game, and an 8-1 touchdown to interception ratio. And what's crazy is he had one, I think it was last year's AFC Championship game, where his completion percentage was about 60.5%. And that's the one that brought it real down. His other 2 games, he was like 77%, 80%. So it would have been even higher. Mahomes in those games, 67.3%, 252.3 yards per game, and a 6-2 touchdown to interception ratio. So all close. The yardage surprises you with Mahomes. He's only averaging 252. That's a little surprising. But Cincinnati's defense is that good, and they're able to, cause some havoc and play a very good, sound defense on the Kansas City Chiefs. One guy I want to point out that I saw like a highlight video. I didn't know about this guy. Mike Hilton on the Cincinnati Bengals, cornerback, number 21, 5'9", buck 84.
Special.
I mean, I saw his tackling ability. He lays the boom. He made a great hit on Josh Allen. He made a couple other great hits. I mean, listen, man, if you got that dog in you, I like this guy. So I'm going to be keeping a keen eye out on this game for number 21, Mike Hilton.
He was actually in the Patriots practice squad, believe it or not, in 2017. They let him go to Jacksonville. Jacksonville let him go to Pittsburgh, and with the Steelers, he emerged into one of the best nickel players in the league. And the Steelers let him go because they had that big Ben cap hit. If Ben were to retire a year earlier, Mike Hilton right now would still be a Pittsburgh Steeler.
So he feels like a Pittsburgh Steeler too. Yeah. Another reason I hate the Cincinnati Bengals for John. For me, for this game, it kind of comes down to two things. On the offensive side for Kansas City, it comes down to how will Patrick Mahomes play with the injury, like you said. And what we haven't highlighted is it's a high ankle sprain, but it's his right foot, and that's his plant foot. So that's going to be very difficult. And also his movement, we all know he's John calls him the greatest off-script quarterback in NFL history. So I don't know how much he's going to be able to use his legs. It's going to be tough for Patty out there. I don't envy him at all. I do think he's going to test the ankle because I think that's just his instinct, and he's a tough SOB. But I don't think it's going to go well for him, man. Like, I think Cincinnati being able to get the pressure up the middle, and they got Hendrickson off the edge, that's going to be tough. I know you talked about I like Orlando Brown. I think he's a good player, all in all. I agree with John. He had a terrible game last week. So Hendrickson, better pass rusher than what the Jaguars got. He could probably take advantage. Most likely he's going to be able to take advantage of Orlando Brown next week. Or this week upcoming. Go ahead.
There's no doubt. I mean, the other thing, too, with this matchup is Cincinnati up front's getting healthy. For Ted Karras and Alex Kappa. Kappa last week was Karras. Which one of them played? I know Jonah
Karras is the center. He played. He got banged up a little bit.
Right.
Put on the brace, I think.
So he's a full participant this week in practice. Kappa looks like he could return. Jonah Williams is somehow questionable as well, which is unbelievable with his knee injury.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at the Bengals offensive line that really stepped up last week in spite of all the injuries. And for this Chiefs defense to go along with the running game, they had to play sound this week. When Pat got hurt last week, they did a pretty good job. Not a perfect. There are some plays, I mean, especially Trevor Lawrence, some of the hits he was taking. I know Joe Burrow is going to get those roughing the passer calls that Trevor Lawrence did not. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there were a lot of missed opportunities by that Jaguars team. So for Kansas City defensively, they need to be sound. They can't have crucial turnovers late in the game because I think their defense is the way they do win this game alongside the running game. Yeah. Like you said, Pat, I have a tough time seeing him just create plays out of structure. And like you said before, really planting, moving around, constantly turning, changing directions. So they're probably going to need to win the turnover battle. That's number one. 2, win the running game. And I think the third biggest thing is the Bengals, they can't go over 24 points. I don't think this Kansas City offense, no Tyreek Hill can get over that amount. And that's why I had the Bengals winning this matchup 31-24. I think it'll be closer than the 7-point spread, but really for the Cincinnati team, people need to recognize it. Cincinnati is the best team in football. With all these injuries, I think it can go a couple different ways. The 49ers and the Eagles have special rosters. But so do the Bengals. Like, the gap between the Bengals and Eagles defense, I don't think is wide much. Because they're so well coached, their offense is so dynamic, and they can beat you in 4 different ways. Joe Burrow is by far, I think, with Patrick Mahomes being neutralized, the best quarterback on the field right now. And that's not the shot at Mahomes, but, I mean, how good is Mahomes at 70% relative to Joe Burrow? I think is worse. So, all things considered from Cincinnati, I think they're going to probably win the turnover battle in this game. And more importantly, I think that defense is going to do a pretty solid job.
Yeah, I agree with all your points. I a little bit disagree with the distance between the Eagles defense and the Cincinnati defense. I think Cincinnati's good all the way around.
Sure.
They just play great football. I just think the Eagles have much bigger names, and they've got those big playmakers out there like a Fletcher Cox and a Hassan Riddick now.
Much better corners.
And Darius Slay, obviously, and Bradbury. And I agree with you. The other thing that I was going to mention, and you hit on it, was the Cincinnati offensive line. Um, while Ted Karras is going to play, their left guard is going to play, which is their two last starters on the offensive line that have been playing. And like you said, Ted Karras got banged up. He had to put on a knee brace last week, I'm pretty sure. Kappa hasn't practiced. He's still dealing with the ankle injury. He's questionable, but he's been questionable for like the last 3 or 4 weeks, or however long it's been. You got Jonah Williams. I think he's got the dislocated kneecap. I think that's the injury. I know it's a kneecap. I don't know if it was dislocated or fractured or whatever it was, but I don't see him playing. I'm just going to be honest. I do not see him playing. I don't know how he's questionable, but yeah. So you're guaranteed you're going to have your center and your left guard, and then probably your backups are going to be there. Kappa, maybe. I mean, maybe.
Now
But you're going up. Go ahead.
No, you're good.
Oh, okay. But you're going up against the number 2 sack team in all of football. Number 1 is Philadelphia with 70. They led the pack. They blew the pack out of the water. But Kansas City was number 2 with 55 sacks. Chris Jones, Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Frank Clark, all those boys. They got a better, let's just say they got a much better pass rush than what the Buffalo Bills put out against Cincinnati. And it's going to be a tougher game for that offensive line to really produce. I think they're going to have to lean a little bit like they did last week, like on Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon, he needs to have a good game. What's his name? P. Ryan. He needs to have a good game. And then obviously those corner, but I think Cincinnati can take advantage of Kansas City's corners if Joe Burrow has enough time in the pocket. I think those receivers are just too good, and I don't think Kansas City's corners are really on that level to compete with those receiving weapons of Cincinnati. So I got Cincinnati in this game. I agree. I think it's going to be close. I got Cincinnati 27-24.
Okay, so we're a little bit below me. The one last thing, dude, this Chiefs, the defense when it comes to stopping the run is going to be a lot better than Buffalo. Buffalo's probably missing their best run-stopping defensive end in Daquan Jones, and that really sent them into a tailspin. There was one play I saw with Jackson Carman, who replaced Jonah Williams at left tackle, where he basically just takes Trayman Edmonds on I believe it was a sweep to the left side, and just sends him 5 feet out of bounds in the shadow realm. It was amazing. Now, Carman, he's definitely not Jonah, but given Jonah's, neutralized down below, I think he probably could hold up fine this matchup. We'll see with these Chiefs pass rushers.
Yeah.
Jerry has the Chiefs losing because Joe Burr is going to be as cool as a cucumber. So that's his pick. I don't know what the score was for him, but that's
I forgot what he gave.
So all 3 of us, man, are taking the Bengals.
All 3 of us are Cincinnati. Yep.
Whew, how quickly the tide can turn for the NFL, man. I mean, I feel like 2 months ago, all of us had the Chiefs as the best team in the AFC.